Don't move. Keep your hands where I can see them. Do not turn around. Marcus! What's happening?
Marcus! Baby, get back inside. Call. Oh, he's reaching!
The motion sensor light clicks on at 11:47 p.m. Marcus Taylor is taking out the trash. It's Thursday night in East Oakland, the kind of quiet residential street where people know their neighbors, where kids play basketball in driveways during summer, where Marcus has lived for 8 years in the modest 3-bedroom house he bought with his VA loan. He's wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, holding a black garbage bag in one hand, his phone in the other. He'd been scrolling through community patrol schedules, coordinating with other new Black Panther Party members about weekend activities. The recycling bin sits at the curb. The trash can is halfway down his driveway. He's thinking about tomorrow's early shift at the warehouse where he works, about picking up his daughter from his ex-wife on Saturday, about the community breakfast his chapter is organizing next month. He's not thinking about the unmarked black SUV that's been parked 3 houses down for 20 minutes, watching his house. Doesn't know that 2 IC agents have decided his home looks suspicious based on an anonymous tip. Doesn't realize that in about 30 seconds, he's going to be shot in his own driveway for the crime of taking out garbage while black. What happens in those 30 seconds will be captured on Marcus's Ring doorbell camera, his neighbor's security system, and the body cameras of the 2 agents who will claim they feared for their lives despite Marcus never reaching for a weapon, never threatening them, never doing anything except standing in his own driveway holding trash and a cell phone. By the time it's over, Marcus will have a bullet in his shoulder, will spend 6 hours in surgery, will lose partial use of his left arm forever. And 2 federal agents will lose their badges, their freedom, and help deliver a jury verdict that becomes the largest home invasion civil rights award in California history. If you believe a man's home is his castle and his driveway is his property, hit subscribe. Because what ICE agent Derek Foster and his partner did to Marcus Taylor proves that some people's assumptions about who belongs in a neighborhood can turn deadly, even when the person belongs there. More than the agents questioning him. Marcus Taylor was 38 years old, a Marine Corps veteran who'd served 2 tours in Afghanistan as a combat engineer. He'd been honorably discharged in 2015 after 8 years of service, returned to Oakland where he'd grown up, and started rebuilding his life. He worked at a distribution warehouse, steady employment with benefits. He'd bought his house in 2016, a small 3-bedroom on a tree-lined street in a working-class black neighborhood. He paid his mortgage on time, mowed his lawn, waved to neighbors. He was a father to 7-year-old Amara, who stayed with him every other weekend. He was a community organizer with the new Black Panther Party, participating in their breakfast programs, their neighborhood patrols, their voter registration drives. He wore his black leather jacket with the Panther patches to meetings and events. He had the black beret. He believed in community protection, in black people looking out for each other, in being visible and organized. None of which was illegal, all of which made him a target. ICE agent Derek Foster and his partner agent Lisa Martinez had been conducting what they called gang surveillance in East Oakland for 3 weeks. They'd received a vague tip, never verified, never specific, that a house on the 2400 block of Seminary Avenue might be connected to gang activity. Seminary Avenue is a long street. The 2400 block has 30 houses. The tip gave no address, no names, no actual evidence. But Foster had decided that meant he could surveil the whole block, looking for suspicious activity. When he saw Marcus's house, neat, well-maintained, but with a black man coming and going in Panther gear, Foster decided that was suspicious enough. Never mind that the Panthers are a legal political organization. Never mind that Marcus had no criminal record. Never mind that wearing political clothing isn't probable cause for anything. Foster saw a black man in Panther gear and decided he was worth watching. For 3 nights, Foster and Martinez parked down the block, watching Marcus's house through binoculars, taking photos, running his license plate, trying to find something, anything that would justify a raid. They found nothing. Marcus's record was clean. His truck registration was current. His house had no warrants, no complaints, no code violations. He wasn't on parole. wasn't on any watch lists, had no outstanding tickets, was, by every legal measure, a law-abiding citizen living in his own home. But Foster had convinced himself that the Panther gear meant gang affiliation, that community organizing meant criminal conspiracy, that a black man who looked confident and organized must be doing something illegal. So on Thursday night, when he saw Marcus come outside to take out trash, Foster decided that was the moment to make contact. No warrant, no backup, no plan. Just two agents approaching a man in his own driveway at nearly midnight because they decided he looked suspicious. Martinez tried to stop him. "Derek, we have nothing. No warrant, no probable cause, no exigent circumstances. We can't just walk up to his house." But Foster was already out of the SUV, his hand on his weapon, walking up the street toward Marcus's driveway. Marcus saw them coming, two people in plain clothes, moving purposefully toward his property. His first thought was neighborhood watch, maybe someone checking on the motion sensor light. Then he saw the weapons on their hips, the way they moved, the tactical postures. His Marine training kicked in. Assess the threat, identify exits, keep your hands visible. He set the garbage bag down slowly, kept his phone in his right hand where they could see it, and waited. His Ring doorbell was recording everything. His neighbor's camera across the street was recording. What neither Marcus nor the agents knew was that Marcus's girlfriend, Shanice Williams, was inside the house watching TV in the living room. She'd glance out the window in about 10 seconds and see everything unfold. "Excuse me," Foster called out, his voice carrying across the quiet street. "Can we talk to you for a minute?" Marcus stayed on his property, on his driveway 20 feet from his front door. "Sure. What's this about?" Foster and Martinez stepped onto Marcus's driveway. No permission, no warrant, just walked onto private property. "We're federal agents. We need to ask you some questions." Marcus's mind raced. Federal agents. No uniforms, just badges on belts. No marked cars. Nearly midnight. On his property without permission. Am I being detained? Or am I free to go back inside my house? "We're investigating gang activity in this neighborhood. We've received reports about this address." Marcus felt his blood pressure spike but kept his voice calm. Controlled. "This is my house. I own it. I've lived here 8 years. There's no gang activity here. I'm a veteran. I work at a warehouse. I'm taking out my trash. Now if you don't have a warrant, I'm going back inside." He turned toward his front door. That's when Foster grabbed his arm. "Sir, don't walk away. We're not done here." Marcus pulled his arm free. Not aggressively, just removing contact, the way anyone would when grabbed by a stranger. "Don't touch me. You're on my property without permission. You don't have a warrant. I'm going inside. Get your hands off me." Foster's hand went to his weapon. "Sir, you're being detained for questioning. Put your hands up now." "Detained for what?" Marcus's voice rose. "I'm in my own driveway. I haven't committed any crime. I told you to leave my property." Martinez was speaking into her radio, calling for backup, her voice urgent. "We need units at 2437 Seminary. Suspect is non-compliant and possibly armed." "Armed?" Marcus heard that through her radio transmission. "I'm not armed. I'm holding a phone. You can see my hands." He raised both hands, his phone visible in his right hand, screen glowing. Inside the house, Shanice heard the raised voices, looked out the window and saw two people she didn't recognize standing in the driveway with Marcus, one with a hand on a weapon. She grabbed her phone and started recording through the window, her hands shaking. Marcus's Ring doorbell was capturing audio and video, everything being said, every movement. "Drop the phone." Foster's gun was out now, pointed at Marcus, his other hand gesturing at the ground. "Drop it now. It's a phone." Marcus was shouting now, his Marine training fighting with his rising panic. "You can see it's a phone. I'm not reaching for anything. My hands are up. I live here. This is my house. Drop the device or I will shoot." Foster's finger was on the trigger. Marcus made a decision. He'd rather surrender his phone than get shot in his own driveway. He carefully, slowly, keeping his other hand raised, knelt down and placed his phone on the concrete driveway. The screen was still glowing, still recording, capturing the image of Marcus kneeling on his own property with his hands up while a federal agent pointed a gun at him. That's when the front door opened. Shanice stood in the doorway, her own phone recording, her voice high with fear. "Marcus, what's happening?" "Ma'am, go back inside." Martinez moved toward the door, her weapon now drawn too. "This is a federal investigation." Marcus turned his head toward Shanice's voice. Just turned his head. Didn't move his body. Didn't lower his hands. Just looked toward his girlfriend standing in his doorway. "Get back inside, baby." Call. The gunshot was impossibly loud in the residential neighborhood. Dogs started barking. Porch lights came on. The bullet struck Marcus in his left shoulder, spinning him sideways, his hands flying out, his body crashing onto his driveway next to the garbage bag he'd been taking to the curb. Shanice screamed, kept screaming, kept recording. Marcus was on the ground, his shoulder bleeding, his Marine training telling him to apply pressure, find cover, assess the wound. But he was on his own driveway. The cover was his own house. The wound was from a federal agent who just shot him for taking out trash. The Oakland Police Department arrived 4 minutes later. 6 patrol cars. Lights painting the quiet street red and blue. They found Marcus on the ground. Shanice kneeling beside him, applying pressure to his shoulder wound with a dish towel. Foster and Martinez standing over them with weapons still drawn. The neighbors were on their porches, several filming. The scene commander, Sergeant James Wilson, assessed the situation immediately. African-American male shot in residential driveway. No weapon visible. Federal agents present. Multiple witnesses recording. This was already a disaster. "Who fired?" Wilson demanded. "I did," Foster said, his voice shaking now. Subject was non-compliant and made a threatening movement. He was kneeling with his hands up. Shanice said, her voice breaking between sobs. "I watched it through the window. I recorded it. They walked onto our property without a warrant and shot him for taking out trash. Check the cameras. Everything's on camera." And it was. Marcus's Ring doorbell had captured everything in high definition. Foster and Martinez walking onto the property without permission. The escalating confrontation. Marcus putting down his phone, kneeling with hands up, turning his head toward Shanice's voice, and the gunshot. Not a threatening movement. Just a man turning his head toward his girlfriend. The neighbor's security camera across the street had captured a wider angle, showing Marcus never reaching for anything, never advancing on the agents, never doing anything except standing in his driveway and then kneeling when ordered. Shanice's phone had captured the view from inside, showing the exact moment of the shot, Marcus's body jerking from the impact. 3 cameras, 3 angles, all showing the same thing: Marcus shot while complying. The paramedics rushed him to Highland Hospital. The bullet had entered his left shoulder from the front, shattered his humerus, severed nerves, and exited through the back of his shoulder. Surgery took 6 hours, orthopedic surgeons pinning his bone, vascular surgeons repairing damaged arteries, nerve specialists trying to salvage what they could. He survived. But his left arm would never be the same. Permanent nerve damage meant limited range of motion, chronic pain, loss of strength. The arm that had worked construction, lifted weights, held his daughter would never fully function again. The video went viral within 12 hours. Federal agents shoot unarmed Black Panther in his own driveway. The Ring footage was shared millions of times. News stations played it on loop. Civil rights organizations called for immediate arrests. The footage was impossible to dispute. Marcus had done nothing threatening, nothing illegal, nothing that justified being shot. He'd been taking out trash in his own driveway and ended up shot because 2 federal agents decided his Panther gear made him suspicious. The Alameda County District Attorney filed criminal charges within a week. Assault with a deadly weapon. Shooting into an occupied residence. Shanice was in the doorway when Foster fired. Trespassing. Deprivation of civil rights under color of authority. The federal civil lawsuit came simultaneously. Marcus Taylor versus Derek Foster, Lisa Martinez, and the United States Department of Homeland Security. The complaint was devastating. Fourth Amendment violations, No warrant, no probable cause, illegal entry onto private property, assault and battery, intentional infliction of emotional distress, permanent disability, violation of Marcus's rights as a veteran, and something unusual, a claim under California's Castle Doctrine, which protects people's right to defend their homes. The argument: if Marcus had shot Foster for trespassing on his property without a warrant, he would have been legally justified. But Foster shot Marcus for standing on his own property. Who was the real threat? The criminal trial came first. The jury watched all 3 videos: Ring doorbell, neighbor's camera, Shanice's phone. They saw Foster and Martinez walk onto Marcus's property without permission or a warrant. Heard Marcus ask if he was being detained. Saw him try to go inside his house. Watched Foster grab him without legal justification. Heard Marcus comply when ordered to drop his phone. Saw him kneel with hands up. Watched him turn his head, just turn his head, toward Shanice's voice. Saw the muzzle flash. Watched Marcus fall. Medical experts testified about the wound, entry angle, bullet trajectory, the permanent damage to Marcus's shoulder, arm, and nerve function. Marines who'd served with Marcus testified about his training, his calm under pressure, his respect for authority. But that he also knew his rights, knew that agents without warrants couldn't just enter his property, knew that compliance didn't mean surrendering your constitutional protections. Constitutional law experts testified about the Fourth Amendment, about how a man's home extends to his curtilage, his driveway, his yard, his property, about how agents can't just walk onto private property without permission, a warrant, or exigent circumstances, about how everything Foster did was illegal from the moment he stepped onto Marcus's driveway. Shanice testified about watching through the window, about seeing Marcus with his hands up, about hearing the gunshot and not knowing if he was dead, about the blood on her hands, the dish towel soaked red, the paramedics working on her boyfriend in their driveway while federal agents stood over them with weapons drawn. The defense tried to argue Foster had feared for his life when Marcus turned suddenly. But the prosecution played the video frame by frame. Marcus's head turns toward the door. No sudden movements. No reaching. No aggression. Just a man looking toward the woman he loves standing in his doorway. The prosecution's closing argument was simple. Marcus Taylor was shot for being a black man with political opinions standing in his own driveway at night. Every element of what Agent Foster did. Approaching without a warrant, stepping onto private property, detaining Marcus without cause, drawing a weapon, firing at a man with his hands up, every single element was illegal. This wasn't self-defense. This was punishment. And in America, federal agents don't get to punish people for existing in their own homes. The jury deliberated 8 hours. Guilty on all counts. Foster was sentenced to 12 years in state prison. The judge citing his abuse of authority, his reckless disregard for Marcus's life, and his violation of the oath he'd taken to uphold the Constitution. His law enforcement career was over. Martinez, who hadn't fired but had failed to stop Foster and had called Marcus possibly armed without any evidence, was convicted of lesser charges and sentenced to 3 years. The federal civil trial came 14 months later. The courtroom was packed with Panthers in full gear, filling the gallery in solidarity. Veterans groups attended in support. The jury watched the videos again, heard about Marcus's permanent disability, the arm that would never fully work, the chronic pain, the lost wages from work he couldn't do anymore, the PTSD from being shot on his own property. Expert witnesses valued the losses. Medical care, $180,000 and ongoing. Lost wages, $40,000 per year for the rest of his working life. Pain and suffering, incalculable. Loss of quality of life. Marcus would never lift weights again. Never pick up Amara without his shoulder screaming. Never feel safe in his own driveway. Then punitive damages. The jury wanted to send a message about the Fourth Amendment, about property rights, about what happens when federal agents treat citizens like enemy combatants in their own homes. The damages, $24.3 million total. $4.8 million compensatory for Marcus's medical care, lost wages, permanent disability, and emotional trauma. $19.5 million punitive, calculated to make every federal agent in America think twice before walking onto someone's property without a warrant. The courtroom erupted. Marcus sat quietly, his left arm in a brace. Still, 2 years later, still needing support. When the verdict was read, he nodded once. A Marine acknowledging a mission completed, even though the victory came at the cost of his shoulder, his arm, his sense of safety in his own home. Both agents were terminated. The director of ICE issued a formal apology, unprecedented, and new protocols were implemented. Agents could not approach private residences without warrants except in genuine emergencies. Body cameras became mandatory for all field operations. Supervisory approval was required before any enforcement action at private homes. Marcus used part of his settlement to establish a legal defense fund for community organizers facing retaliation. He continued his work with the Panthers, though he could no longer do the physical community service work he'd loved. His arm wouldn't allow it. But he could speak, could share his story, could warn other young black men that your own driveway isn't always safe, that your own property isn't always protected, that federal agents sometimes see threats where there are only citizens. Years later, asked if the verdict felt like justice, Marcus's answer was measured, delivered with the same calm he'd shown on his driveway that night. The money helps. It funds legal defense for others, pays my medical bills. But justice would have been those agents seeing a man taking out trash and driving past. Justice would have been them respecting property rights, the Fourth Amendment, the fact that I earned my citizenship through military service and purchased my home with a VA loan. What we got was accountability after violence. It's better than nothing. But I still can't lift my daughter with my left arm. Still have nightmares about being shot in my own driveway. Still flinch when cars park too long on my street. The money doesn't fix that. The 3 videos are still online, used in law enforcement training as examples of what not to do, played in Fourth Amendment seminars, shown in veteran advocacy meetings. They show a man in sweatpants taking out trash, federal agents walking onto his property without permission, a confrontation escalating from nothing, and a gunshot that never should have happened. Should federal agents face automatic felony charges for entering private property without warrants? Comment below. Because what happened to Marcus Taylor could happen to anyone whose appearance, whose politics, whose confidence makes someone in authority uncomfortable. The only thing that saved his life was his Marine training teaching him to comply even when compliance meant kneeling in his own driveway. And even that wasn't enough to prevent the bullet. If you believe property rights matter and veterans deserve respect, subscribe. Tomorrow we cover another case where someone's badge met someone's constitutional rights and lost expensively.